Next speaker I want to introduce is Molly Azami. Molly is working towards a doctorate in geography here at UGA. She is conducting research as a member of the Victoria Falls Elephant Project. The work of this project is focused on decreasing instances of human-elephant conflict in the safety of both elephant and people. They work closely with several other organizations in the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. I think I got that right. All right, Molly, take it away.
I'm cheating. I'm using my notes here too. So I can talk, look and talk and do everything at once. So I'm going to be honest. This project got, after a few weeks or maybe a month after we put in the abstract, got kind of put on hold and back burner. So I'm going to give you the lowdown of everything as best I can in the time I have and what we've done, what I've done so far anyways in it. Okay, why did the elephant cross the Zambezi? This is actually one of our elephants, number 8, that I'll talk about later. Oh, I pushed the green button. Oh, sorry, there we go. I don't know what I'm pushing. Okay. So I'm going to go over the overall project. I have a lot of slides, so some of them I'll go through quickly. Talk about the whole issue is that the Zambezi is an international border, and there's lots of international borders, and how that, I don't have a whole lot of information on how the different policies affect it, but that is the issue, and that's why we're doing this research, is that, anyway, I'll get into that later. Then we're going to, talk about the GIS of it, and that would be the stuff that I did so far with mostly terrain analysis, continuing work, and then the typical acknowledgements and references. Okay, so the overall project, they work with Connected Conservation, and there's several Connected Conservations out there. So if you go online, it's actually connectedconservation.com, not the .org. That's a good organization that's doing a lot of the work with the chili peppers, if you've heard of that, because there's a lot of chili pepper being used for elephant control out there. Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust, Zimbabwe Parks Wildlife Management, and the Zambezi Elephant Welfare Conservation Trust. Okay, so this project, the team works as it was announced in the beginning. The primary focus is trying to mitigate human-animal conflict areas and promote coexistence. And so the things that this project does is they do monitoring through GPS collars. Also, the airplane there shows that they do localized surveys of the animals. Then these is the chili pepper. They also do, so they coordinate with local farmers and do a lot of education and awareness programs. They also are consultants for development there to try to get development to go in a way that is helpful for the animals and not blocking the elephants, because that's where you get a lot of conflict. And then active mitigation, they use this disruptive darting where they dart the elephant. And this picture, that's what this is. This is the pointer. This picture up here is Malvern applying the wax on a darted elephant. And what they've noticed is it definitely does affect them to not go in the same area, at least for a while. I don't have that data either. This is just a rundown of what they're working on. Okay, so this is the Kava, as you said, the Kavango Zambezi Conservation Area. You did it good. You can just say the Kaza. That's the way they do. But it covers. You can see the countries that are covered here, and this area right here is around Victoria Falls, which is between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and Victoria Falls town is actually in Zimbabwe. So this is where some of the issues we get. And so what we're looking at is the bulls that are collared are usually ones that have had issues, and that's why they got collared because they got caught in town or at a dump or at the airport, and they got darted and collared, and probably waxed. But so this is some of the bad behavior of, and okay, so we're talking about bull elephants because they do not belong to family groups, and they're usually the more aggressive. Of course, a mother will be aggressive if you're near her, and family groups will be aggressive if you're near their babies. But this group is mostly working with the rogue bull elephants. And so, of course, there's crop raiding, property damage, intimidation, or cause of harm of to humans. These are the reasons we're doing this work, is to keep them from eating garbage, bathing and drinking in the treatment facilities, and becoming victims of poachers. I don't know if any of you guys know about the cyanobacteria research that's done here in UGA. There's definitely an active algae bloom in this pond right here, but can't tell you whether it's cyanobacteria at this time or not. But in general, in the area there is, and so that's another thing that is being watched and monitored, is like, where are those elephants going? And that's why we're doing this research. And so the whole transboundary issue, and this is the Zambezi is the river that flows between Zambia and Zimbabwe. The larger city is actually Livingstone in Zambia, and Victoria Small Falls is a smaller town in Zimbabwe, but this is where the group I'm working with is, and most of the elephants that are tagged by this group and are being monitored are, their main part of their range is in Zimbabwe. And so this shows for the 4 elephants that I was monitoring, or that I have the data for from 2017 to 2019, who do cross the river. So they have several elephants tagged. They do cross into various, this actually is just one particular elephant. You'll see that in another map, who goes everywhere, all the way over here and all the way over here. And this one, they found out, was chased and ran way up here. And anyway, that's just some of the background of the elephants that we know, but some of the issues that we have. Okay, so, and again, this is just showing, this is all like the first 10 that were tagged, and showing some of their hotspot areas, and all of them are in bulls 9 and 10 are along the Botswana area. And this one here, 8, is the only one you might be able to consider. Maybe it is mostly a Zambia, but he actually lives mostly in the river. That picture you saw at the beginning was 8. And to get to know 8 a little more, can you play that video? She was sorry. This is also bull 8, and this is what they do in the river. And this is just as a little side. If the bandwidth is good enough. Okay. Whoops. That was supposed to go to the next slide. There it goes. All right. Okay, so this one here, I just wanted to read. This is a quote from our annual report, and I liked it because it kind of gives a summary of some of the issues. It says, as noted by Lindsay in 2017, 76% of African elephants are in populations which cross at least one international boundary. This is a wide-ranging implication for elephant co-management. In Kaza, there are 5 countries attempting to co-manage elephant populations. And historically, and I'm changing words here a little bit, they do not have harmonized policies. And so this just complicates the issues, and the increase in population and urbanization just continues to increase that complexity. Now, I know in southern United States, in our southern forestry, we don't have a lot of international boundaries, but I still think it can relate somewhat to when you have different states, different jurisdictions of who's responsible for whatever is happening between the conflicts between animals and people. And so now we get to the GIS of it, which again, as I said, was kind of put on hold. So it's just some of the work that I did. Okay. So to better analyze the GPS points, I used the ArcGIS Pro Intelligence Toolbox. And I should have maybe showed some of the pieces of that now that I'm seeing other people's. The other things that people have done for this workshop, I probably should have stepped you through how to use that, but retro, too late now. So here are the tracks that were created, and you can see here that the tracks, it doesn't see a lot from this distance, but when you zoom in, you start to see patterns. So you definitely can see that nobody's crossing in this area. Could be deep water, could be various reasons. But they do cross here onto this island and then go across, and there's a crossing part here. But the dramatic is when you get, this is upstream from the towns, go down to the towns, and they really see the difference. You see where they cross. You see that this area right here is where they come down and cross. They go over here. They do somewhat over here. There is a tributary here that they're going up. And I'm going to talk about, we're trying to figure out, we can guess about a lot of the river stuff, like is it heavy flow, is it deep? Is that why they're crossing? But we're going to look at some other factors as well. And why do they like the Zambia side so much when it's going the river, when they want to go to the river? This is the golf course, and I mentioned number 2 before is the one that goes everywhere, and that's mostly his tracks for the golf course. Okay, so the complete study aims to analyze many aspects of the physical environment. What draws the elephant to the Zambia side of the Zambezi, and why do the tracks cluster in specific areas? Like what's causing them to go in that specific spot? Some of the aspects were currently being investigated. Something I didn't mention here, but with each one of these, we're also looking at the seasons, because there's a wet and dry and a mixed season, transition season there. And with all of these, we look at those aspects. But we want to look at the higher, the projects that's happening, but in the work that's being done is higher resolution land cover maps, as opposed to the one we had in 2015, which is was done with Landsat, so it's not high enough resolution to see different types of grasses. It says grassland. It doesn't say different types of grasses. It doesn't show where there's fruit trees that have been planted by local people, which is something that definitely attracts elephants. More detailed and high resolution soil maps. There's been talk about how the soil, as it changes during the wet and dry season, the elephants will avoid the muddier soils, and because they don't want to get their feet stuck. So that's something we need to look at. Then land use surveys of fencing and other physical obstructions is going on, but I don't have that data. And so what I'm going to work at, and what I'm looking at today is the bottom one, the terrain analysis. And this is what I began to work with the GIS. Oops. This one. Okay, so here's an advertisement because I'm using their picture. This is for a Viator Trip Advisory Company. I have no idea if they're good or not, but they're letting me use their picture. So this, if you look back up, let's see if I can go back. So you have this island, this bulge here. You go back to that one we were looking at. That's it right there. This is that big island, the smaller island, the bulge, the golf course. And I love this picture because it shows what we're going to look at is slope and elevation and changes in elevation, which you see we're on a river plain here. The mountains go off that way, the higher elevation, but you can't really see, and even the locals couldn't really tell that there was huge changes. So this is what this data is looking at is, does the terrain have an effect on the elephants? And so a lot of my work, and you want to talk about it, was data issues. A lot of my time spent when I did this work was with data issues, being that you're working with GPS data, which has already been talked about with the previous speaker was talking about the accuracy. Now they're not using phones, they are using GPS collars, and they should be pretty accurate, but there's still a lot of missed data. There's lots of, when we first got the data, we were originally getting it in inconsistent intervals. It was given to us. We weren't able to get the raw data. It was given to us. And so the date format changed at various times throughout as we got it. And all these things are to be taken into account when you're working with large amounts of data, because it does take time. And I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but this is what I did in order to clean up the data. These are the steps that I took. If you want to use the intelligence toolbox to change GPS into tracking, you're going to have to get it into a certain format that it can easily be brought in. Oh, do we? When am I done? Oh, do I? Okay, I'm sorry, but I do have a lot of time. Okay. Yeah, I just don't want to rush too much. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, bringing it in, I use Excel a lot for the basics. It's really good for changing the date type, because you can save it out into a CSV. Once you have the date type changed, the whole column changed in Excel, you can save it out. And obviously it's going to stay in the CSV in the format that you had put it in Excel. So that's a really quick way to standardize date formats. Another thing to note, and I guess a lot of you, you're all technical people, is don't use shapefiles, or you can, but the complexity, it just adds another level of complexity of making sure your date and time fields are it's going to be in a shapefile, it's going to be a text field. You have to make sure it's in the right format. If you just use a geodatabase, you can mark it as a date file, and it will be called in whatever format you put it in. It will put it in the basic. I even think, I don't know, there's ESRI. Well, it wouldn't be ESRI. Yes, it would be. I don't know in their base format if they're using the Linux time or the Unix time stamp, but that's what most databases are based on. And so it will call it out in whichever way you want to view it. If it's a date format, if it's a text format, then you have to make sure you're right. Let it make sure it's right. That's my theory with that. Of course, did a lot of Python to sort, to create. Oh, okay. And you had to create, to use that tool, you have to have groups. Sorry. It's going to group everything, and you have to tell it where the beginning and end is. And so I did that. Hold on, let me go back. It's been a while. It was going to give me one line for two points, and it wouldn't connect the second point to the third point in one track the way it does it naturally. So I had to create a group 1 and a group 2 so that I got that overlap, so that I got the continuous form, and so that it worked for me for GPS data. So I was able to keep the ID fields and make sure the elephants matched to the tracks that I was doing. And then of course in ArcGIS Pro, then in ArcGIS Pro, it just went through all of this. This is the intelligent package here. You do the points to track segments. You start with a coordinate table, points to track segments, and all of these things to digitize it and export the CSV. I don't know, that's where I was. Told you it's been a while, so I have to remember exactly what I did and why I did it. But if anyone has questions about it, hopefully I'll remember. Okay, thank you for telling me I had lots of time for that one. All right, so the data used, so I ended up, once cleaned up, I had 150,000 line segments. Of course, I'm not showing this map, actually, I just remembered I took it out, but I had the land cover from 2015 to show that the elephants mostly used, when they were getting towards the water, they mostly used where the grassland was and didn't go through the forest. But because it was so inaccurate, and I decided to leave that map out, but I could go back and show anyone who's interested. The global digital elevation module is what I used to create the slope and the elevation for the maps. And so here is a DEM of the whole area, and the tracks here are clipped to a buffer. because I was running some other, actually did some machine learning that didn't produce any results, but that's why I clicked it to a buffer so that I could make sure I wasn't getting more than I wanted for that. But I'm using the map because it really shows a lot. It shows, so the brown and pink is going up in the mountains here. You can see, you think of Africa, we're at 1,300 feet here, just in case you didn't realize how high it was. So here we have, you can see that there is terrain. I mean, the mountains are, not where we are, but the terrain here, you can see that the elephants primarily go in the lower areas. They follow like the seasonal ravines, dry ravines, and even the wet ravines. And that's how, at least that's what we've noticed and how they get to it. And so one of the reasons we think they're over here is because the floodplain is larger and it gives them more room to move around. And the reason they stop here is because there's a big private fence for private land there. And that's, of course, the Zambia side. So I don't have a lot of information on the Zambia side. Zooming in farther in, you can just see that this whole yellow area is pretty flat. And they come across here mainly to go to these islands closer to the falls. There's an area, I could go back here, but there's someone actually building a hotel right in this corner right here, a resort. And that's a big controversy with us because the elephants are very actively crossing the river in that area. And here too, I think, I'm assuming that they don't cross here because it's probably more muddy because you can see it gets really low. That's the green. So it even goes lower there. This is the type of work I did. And back to that picture, again, just to remind people that, see, this is that place where it gets really low and it might be marshy and muddy. But these are the places they're crossing here. Here's that tributary. Here's the below the golf course where they're crossing and coming into these islands. And there's another tributary over here. It's not as noticeable as where they cross to that smaller island before they come across. So you can then look at slope. We also did a slope analysis with these. You can see that, that they're crossing. The slope is lower. It's hard to see with the tracks on. So here's the picture without the tracks. And you can see that the slope is much lower here. There is some steeper slopes on this area here. I'm thinking the way the river's running, this would, you know, if it was this would be the cut bank, right? Because it's going this direction, and this would be the point bar. And this area right here might have a bit of cut bank there, but I did see a video. I just want to say, if you want to go online, there's tons of videos of the elephants on the Zambezi, of an elephant where there was a small cut bank that was sandy, and they did that, either some other animals or somebody had created just a little dig to get up over it. It was like a little step. So I don't know, they're probably able to do that when it's sandy there. Again, need the soils information. And so of course we did, just to confirm, we did some line density, kernel density maps. This is upstream because it's hard. We're going to zoom in for the downstream area by the city over here. But you can see that the densities are definitely in the lower sloped areas. And then we have, of course, we overlay it, and here we are down in the city area. This is where the falls are, by the way. You can see the slope here. And I'm not sure what happened to my other two. They seem to have gotten moved here before I got it. Oh, well, ignore the red dots, because I don't think they're where they're supposed to be. This one is. Yeah, they are. They're where they're supposed to be, but I lost 2 of them. Okay. Okay, so the results of the GIS section is that we definitely, terrain does affect elephant movement. And I was thinking of that this morning when I was walking here, because I was trying to cut from I'm a UGA student, so I have a parking spot, and I'm trying to cut from my parking spot over to here in a way that I hadn't walked in many years, and there's lots of new buildings and new development, and I was following a path and went the wrong direction and ended up And if I had gone, I ended up on the hill across from the geography department. And if I had gone the way that was probably the most direct route, it would have faked me down a hill and up. And I said, why should I go down a hill and up? Let me just stay up here and walk around. It was probably a tiny bit, a few steps longer, but I guess we're all like elephants and we like to take the route of least resistance. So we can go on to, now we're going to talk about just the continued work. Did I go way too fast? Yeah, the continued work. And so to complete the answer, why did the elephant cross the Zambezi? We need to, and there's lots of stuff we need to do here, but for me, I need to quantify, trying to get supposed to go back. Where am I going? Did I jump so far? Okay, there we go. I'm supposed to quantify the information about terrain and do some regression models. I plan on doing some modeling of the movements and add more elephants to it. Also divide it out into wet and dry. See the 3 seasons early. There's a transition, and wet and dry season. Expand the study beyond the Zambezi border and also look at that Botswana border and see if there's similar issues there. There's not a large river, but I'm sure that water has a lot to do with where they're going and why they're going in that direction. Conduct local land cover and land development, private land, fruit trees, and small garden surveys, which is the people on the ground are doing that. It's not something I can do here, but it is definitely in their plans. We just haven't got to be able to do that yet. And again, one of the drawbacks on the Zimbabwe side, they can do that a little bit easier. Still difficult, but they can do it a little easier. But on the Zambia side, it's even harder because they have to deal with the international issues. And then we need to obtain the higher resolution soil maps for the area as well, which actually I don't have any. The soil maps I have are very broad. They're more like continent wide soil maps. So they were really not useful. Okay, that's all, yeah, okay. So the acknowledgements, this is the team, which I didn't have at the beginning, but this is it's on the brochure. And so if you guys are here at UGA, you might know Dr. Marguerite Madden. She's my major professor. And the other person here, and Kate Markham is another PhD student here at UGA. Loki Ferrell and Malvern are the 2 on the ground in Victoria Falls. And then we have another previous UGA student, now a professor, Andrea Presotto, and Dr. Bill Langbauer, who is an elephant specialist. He used to work for the Pittsburgh Zoo. And then Connected Conservation and Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust, because they provided a lot of the data and groundwork. And most of these people are a member of Connected Conservation anyways. Okay, references, you can look at those later. Questions?